welcome to the Fulton County Animal Welfare Board meeting. Today is April 29th, and we're going to start with roll call. Do you want to start? Do we want to start on
Sorry,
this
one
one?
second. Calissa?
Yes.
Can you guys hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Okay, I can kick it off then. So we just need to call the meeting to order. It is 7:12 a.m. Oh, sorry, 7:12 p.m.
No, it's 5:12 p.m.
Is it 5? Oh, my apologies. I don't know what time it is. It is 5:12 p.m.
I'm not sure she can do that. Ms.
and
Chair,
we'll call this- Yes.
I'm sorry. Calissa has to do it since she's president and assistant chair. Vice chair,
okay.
I'm sorry.
So it has to be physical presence, so she will be presiding over the meeting.
Correct.
Okay, perfect. That's fine. My apology. Go ahead, Calissa.
But you can always correct me if I do anything wrong. I want to call the meeting to order. Do we have to call a motion to start the meeting?
Just state the time and then go into roll call to confirm that we have quorum.
Okay, copy that. So we'll start with roll call. Do you guys need to do it or just us? Just us. The time is now 5:13 p.m.
Yoshina Colbert Bradford, District 6.
Laurel Ann Dooley, District 4.
Karen Levy at large.
And then Calissa Wade in Commissioner Ellis's district, and Vice Chair. Do we have any opening remarks?
Can we motion now? I think the motion for the
I have no
minutes.
opening remarks at this time.
Okay, great. So we're going to do approval of the minutes from the last meeting. I think all of the board got the minutes in their email today. Do we have a motion to approve the minutes?
So moved.
And a second? Second. Okay, great. So the minutes from the last meeting are approved. And then next, we want to move to the quarterly shelter operations report.
Okay. Thank you very much. I'm Rebecca Gwen everybody knows that, with Lifeline Animal Project. Our Fulton County Animal Services Shelter Director, Audrey Shoemaker, is here, and also our Director of Operations at Fulton County Animal Services, Belinda Bell. And here we go. David, next slide. We'll start out with our shelter intake. Intake is a little bit higher in 2024 than 2023. What we've done is we've given you the statistics on each one of these slides for each month, and then quarterly total. And I'll just check with you guys. So going forward, we'll do it the same way, basically. So the next quarter we would have April, May, and June. It's up to you. To me, it's a better comparison if you do year to date rather than just each quarter separately. So the next column would be year to date for quarter 2 of 2024, and then year to date for 2023, and then you can kind of see how we're tracking against the previous year. Great, that's how we'll do it next time. And it's not a huge uptick. I think we're seeing a little bit higher intake of, just a little bit higher intake of both of dogs and cats. So it's, but it seems to be tracking. Well, I guess we have a larger over-the-counter intake. Wait a minute. Looks like all dog intake is. Yeah, so the total intake is down a little bit, but dog intake is up. That's what I'm looking at. All right, the next slide, please. With any luck, yay, this shows you on our intake the proportion of intake by jurisdiction. Now, this is kind of a new statistic for us. We've tracked it sort of loosely in the past, but we're starting to hone in on it more, really, as of this month. So, where that where it says 25% of the intake is from Fulton County, that is actually intake that wasn't designated by jurisdiction. Unincorporated Fulton County is only about, I don't know, this big maybe. It's like a mile's worth of land over by the airport. So it's very unlikely that that represents 400 animals. So I would wager that most of that is probably City of Atlanta, but we'll know much better next time. Next for our next meeting, we'll have a little better breakdown. And after Atlanta, usually our next highest intake is South Fulton. It looks like Roswell is coming up a little bit higher on this one. And this represents all intake, so both the field and dogs and cats that are brought in. The next slide, please.
Rebecca, can I ask a quick?
Yeah,
could you
please
just
stop me if you have a question. Sure.
I can move this. Could you clarify what the Fulton County segment was again? I just wasn't clear. So there was City of Atlanta and then,
So the Fulton County segment in this particular slide pretty much represents intake where the jurisdiction wasn't determined.
okay.
Right, so it's just coming in as Fulton County, but there is an unincorporated part of Fulton County, but it would be highly unlikely that this much intake would come from there. It'd be more like 2, so.
Do we know why it wouldn't have been determined?
Yeah, it's just not something that we really regularly tracked, and so if it wasn't apparent by the zip code or something like that right away, they didn't note it at intake. So they're just, it's like unidentified. But there's not. It's more of an operational issue. It doesn't mean that there's anything unusual. It's more that it's not a statistic that we had tracked carefully until now.
Oh, okay. I thought
Yeah.
they had always asked for cross streets. The one time I had to bring it.
So this is not calls for service. This is the calls for service. It is tracked, but this is this is all the animals. So it's all the over-the-counter animals that come in. So there were about right around 400 animals where the jurisdiction wasn't designated over-the-counter. But we'll have a separate slide for calls for service, if that makes sense.
Got it. Yeah, the one time
Okay.
I brought in over the counter, they asked for a cross street. So I just assumed they
Okay.
always did it.
Cool.
So Rebecca, is this something that, I know that this is something we're starting to capture now, and I
Yes.
was talking to Vern, this is something that we looked at adding because we were kind of asked, hey, how many are coming from what cities and what jurisdictions? So we're trying to, so it's something new that they're doing now, but going forward, it'll be something that'll be regularly tracked as part of the process.
Right.
So we're capturing what's coming from the field, and we've always done that, but what's actually coming into the shelter, like folks like, I found this dog and I'm bringing it into the shelter, I found this animal bringing this shelter, that wasn't tracked like this way before.
It was partially tracked. That's why we have any data, but it just wasn't a part of the process. So it's a data entry issue, but it will be going forward. And yeah, so we have a set of reports that we provide to the county every month, and this was not one of the numbers being tracked up until now. So everybody's starting to focus more on this. The service is always looked at before as calls for service, so whatever happens in field services, and there's really a lot that goes on in the shelter that wasn't being captured by that number. So we're trying to capture give a better picture of how much the different jurisdictions actually use the facility.
Okay. Yeah, that's good to track. Good.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay. On outcomes, we came out with a 90% save rate for the first quarter, and that's these people here had like practically nothing to do with it except listening to them. So my congratulations to them, because it's been a really hard. The last year and a half have been really, really difficult. So that's great to see that save rate at 90%. We're at 90.3 in 2023. And I think the biggest increase there that we're seeing maybe transfer to rescue? Yes. Yes, it's an increase in our transfer to rescue. So that's very heartening to see because we really lost a lot of rescue partnerships over the pandemic. So it's great to see that number starting to tick up. And we also have a pretty fantastic rescue coordinator as well. So going up, next slide.
I have a question.
Sure.
Is there any particular criteria for a rescue to be able to pull a dog? I mean, if they're an established legitimate rescue, is there any particular requirement that they have to meet? Because you know that different small rescues pop up and, you know.
So they have to be licensed by the Department of Agriculture first. If they're out of state, then if there's licensing in the state that they're in, they have to be licensed in that state. They have to be a 501c3, and we require an animal control reference from their whatever jurisdiction they're in, and also a veterinary reference. You want to add more?
Are you guys, let me piggyback that. Are you guys reaching out to rescues with particular dogs, or you just kind of wait for them to come to you? And are they doing this on any particular days? Is it just when that hold time is up?
It's we reach out to them most often. We do have some partners that come in, but most of them are initiated by the team, and it's all day, sometimes all night, reaching out. So it's constant. We do have a really good placement manager who does quite a bit of rescue reach out, and we have a partnership form that is completed too, and so that would initiate some of the different calls that Rebecca was talking about for our reference checks. We also take a look at their social, see if we can follow dogs, Google, see if there's any issues there. We have a lot of partners that we've worked with for a long time, so it's really, I kind of call it like account management. Once you have that trusted relationship and you get to know their teams, we have probably, I think we have like 150 to 200 different partners, but of that, from our regular polls, there's probably around like 30 sort of to 50 regular polls, and it's been pretty consistent the last few years with some of the groups that have stuck by us, and we have long-term relationships with them.
What about efforts to transport dogs to other states? What is that process like, and is there any ability or opportunity to grow that and get some of these dogs to other places?
Yeah, that's actually a lot of our partners are actually out of state because the local groups are spread pretty thin between all of the different county shelters that we have. So a lot of it is establishing relationships with different partners, and that looks a little bit different. Some of our most trusted and consistent partners have a local vet that they work with here, so it's a quick movement, and we don't actually transport or have anything to do. We transfer to them, they have a system in place, they transport up on their own, but we are building out more and more partnerships out of state where we can fill a bus. Sometimes our team will transport ourselves, or it might be rescue partners. Sometimes they'll pay to have a transport put together. We've done it a couple different ways. It could be that if we have a group that's pulling in the Northeast, which is often the area where people pull from, if we have one group, let's say, is taking 10 to 15 dogs, we'll see if there's another group in the area that we can partner with. So sometimes we can sort of get a group together and do a transport that way. We did just hire a second rescue coordinator that's focusing specifically on transports. She's reaching out to a lot of different groups that we haven't partnered with before, so we're trying to expand and recruit more rescue partners right now.
It's very competitive. There's still not a lot of space, right? So it really, when Audrey talks about being account management, it's very relationship based, and it's the people at Lifeline reaching out pretty much constantly. So it's not like rescue groups in the Northeast are looking at the website and going, oh, I want that one. Yeah, that doesn't happen. And then they'll often market very specific animals to the different groups.
Well, part of the vetting process, too, also includes proving that they keep the life-saving rate as well. Right.
Yeah,
Yeah.
we only have rescue, like we wouldn't transfer animals to another shelter that is having the same issues we're having, kind of thing, right?
They have to prove
Yeah.
the life-saving rate, be part of the nonprofit.
Yeah, they have to be.
And also the new
pretty
shelter
much.
helps with getting more rescue partnership because it controls any sort of illness spread as well.
It's a mixed bag on that. Yeah, it can be a little bit difficult because sometimes there's the shelter that we're in now is certainly a lot nicer, and we're very grateful to be there. But some of the urgency, it's still an animal shelter, and it's all about moving animals through the system. And sometimes it can make it a little bit more challenging when you have a new shelter. Partners might not be as eager to come in when we're really struggling to move the needle. That's why we've put so much effort into the transfers, is because this is an area, for adoption, we have so many different promotions. We have a lot of staff. It's working through customer service, but this is one of the strategic areas where you can have a little bit more say in trying to build that out and have a little bit of a better idea of what you're going to be able to place. We focus a lot of our rescue transfers on medical cases that would need more than what we're able to take care of at the shelter. Because I do believe every animal, if they're safe, should have a program that's designed to save their life if they can have a positive outcome. So that's where our primary focus has been, is to move them through the system through rescue partners if they're medical. But we do also just have a lot that go out for space and for time. And that would be the focus for those transports that you're talking about.
Okay. Any other questions about outcomes? Cool. This is our foster program. We're going to talk more about the foster program. Audrey is going to talk about it by request. This gives you some where the numbers are. We are continuing to increase our foster program. And it's up quite a bit, actually, over last year. Next. And these are our volunteer stats. There's a reason my doorbell at home is ringing. Excuse me. There's a reason that I don't have the first quarter totals on volunteers, and that's because there's a lot of duplication. Like, we could total the volunteer hours, but you'll have the same volunteers working each month, so that it will really just total all these things at the end when we can aggregate everything. But this gives you an idea of where we are each month, and it's dropping a little bit in volunteer hours, but I think our volunteer program is doing pretty well. So overall,
That we have seen a big increase since we've moved to the new shelter. Many of you would know from being volunteers. That's been very helpful.
yeah. And next slide, David. David's not listening anymore. David, are you driving still? Thank you. Okay, field operations. Calls for service are showing down a lot in the first quarter. Now, y'all know about the cyber attack, right? So no, you don't know about the cyber attack? Okay, so all of Fulton County was victimized by a cyber attack, and that took out a little bit of our functioning. It took out the dispatch system momentarily. We also had some trouble in the first quarter with the phone system, and once the cyber attack got resolved, it took all of Fulton County's computer systems out. So it was pretty bad.
That happened to the city of Atlanta
Yeah.
a few years ago, and I was out of town. That's why I didn't know.
It was pretty bad. So it took, and it impacted, our phones didn't work at all. I think the radios worked, but dispatch was a little bit different. And so the county got 911 services who dispatch our officers up and running, but it was still on a temporary thing. So a lot of our field operations data is just not as robust as we'd like it to be. And we may never be, we're trying to reconstruct it basically, but there are a couple of different systems involved. So our calls for service are showing down a little bit. I don't know how accurate that is. And if we could go to the next slide. And this is more to your point, the calls for service by jurisdiction. So while we're not really, I don't think we're capturing all the calls. I do think that these percentages are probably pretty close, that this is generally what the service delivery breaks down at. And so you can see Fulton County itself, 0, because there's really not any part of unincorporated Fulton County. We see City of Atlanta represents the bulk of the service at 63%, as South Fulton comes in at a distant second and then the rest of the jurisdictions fall in line. The southern jurisdictions, I guess East Point would be next, and then we start to get. Am I right about East Point? Yeah. East Point would be next. South Fulton, Union City. So it's pretty much City of Atlanta and South where most of the calls come from. And next slide, David. This is Pets for Life. So ISO had asked me to kind of differentiate. Pets for Life is not a Fulton County Animal Services program. It is an independent program that Lifeline runs. We do our Fulton County, both our community support teams and our field officer teams work very closely with Lifeline's Pets for Life program, and we refer people from the Fulton operation to Pets for Life whenever it's possible, because it covers 6 zip codes within the City of Atlanta where we provide these services. But Pets for Life, for those of you who don't know, is a community engagement program where we're literally going door to door, offering assistance for people's pets. We see about 2,000 pets. 6,000 pets a year. So we're up a little bit for the first quarter with up at around 1,700 pets over last year, helped by that program. And it's free vaccinations, free vet care, free food, free spay-neuter. We do free supplies, anything that we can do. We've added a more robust mobile vet clinic, so that's why you're seeing that number tick up quite a bit over 2023. Well, we didn't have a mobile clinic in 2023, so we have one now. And then the next slide, please, David. I think that may be it. Yep, staffing. There's an update on where we are on staffing. The current contract calls for 134 staff total. We're at 111. Our where we're lacking more, I guess, at this point is our animal services officers. Everything else is starting to fill up pretty well. We're still behind in client care and community support. That's the people at the front desk. But our animal care numbers, which were very scary in December, that is much closer to where we need to be. And we're showing 2 veterinarians on this. I don't know if that's actually 2 full-time veterinarians, but definitely have a lot more consistent relief vet presence. And we did have to figure out a way to report this, both to you and to the county. We did open the clinic to the public about the first or second week of April. Yeah. So where we're doing wellness. So it's where the public can come in and make wellness appointments and do vaccinations. And I think we're doing 2 or 3 days a week in the afternoon for that.
Is that low cost or no cost?
It's low cost. It can be no cost if it needs to be, but it's significantly lower cost than a regular veterinarian. So, and we're still trying to figure out, how much service we're going to be able to provide out of there and how to staff it. But the idea was that we would hopefully be able to provide at least 15 to 20 hours a week open to the public. And between you and me, I budgeted for 20% of that service to be at no charge to the public, but we don't have a program in place for that just yet.
Other than spay, neuter, and vaccinations, I know you said you haven't fully defined it, but what would be examples of the kind of care you would get? You see people on social saying, my dog was hit by a car, can't afford to do anything, or my dog was attacked by another dog. Like, where are you drawing the lines at this time?
I'm not really drawing the line just yet. I don't know, Belinda, if you can address this a little bit more. Right, so the clinic, it's a full service clinic, which is really exciting. It's got x-ray, it's got dental x-ray. It's very nice. I think does it have ultrasound too? Yeah.
Even a dental room.
It's got, dental and dental x-ray, right? So we would be able to, provided that we had the staff in place, we'd be able to take care of some of those things. But the first priority has to be the shelter animals, so it also has to fit within those parameters. But and I don't know if we've had any public emergencies or anything like that that we've gotten into, but
Not yet. We're still working on the mostly wellness right now, but we're trying
Yeah.
to work towards more of these others.
we'd like to have a few appointments each day available for those kinds of things too. But we're again, we have to integrate it with the shelter because it's a one big beautiful clinic, but it's also serving the 400 animals that are in the shelter. So we just are trying to work that out. But we're excited to have it, and we're going to get there. And for some of those people, yeah, we'll be able to do that. We'll probably start with our Pets for Life clients because we have a little bit more control just over the clients, basically. So to see, kind of experiment, how much more service can we provide out of that location. We have Lifeline has its own full-service clinic, but it's not very centrally located for this population. So.
We do get a lot, most of the, beyond vaccines, a lot of skin, ear issues, some UTIs, things like that, which our team is able to address right now.
Does the Pets for Life mobile, does that do spay and neuter as well, or does the mobile vet just do shots?
It just does, it does everything but surgery. So they can do some of the other things that, like the skin issues and stuff like that, but it's not set up to do surgery. We transport the Pets for Life clients to our College Park clinic, and sometimes we utilize that clinic. Fulton County actually helped renovate it to a certain extent a couple of years ago. So we were using it for a while for overflow, and we can also use it for overflow, spay neuter for the shelter, and that happens on occasion as well.
Okay, so there's a way if they don't have transport available.
Yeah,
to
we
transport
do
the spay
transport.
neuter.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. We do transport for them. We just aren't able to. We don't have a mobile spay neuter unit, but we'll transport them to our freestanding clinics. Yeah. And again, that's all Lifeline. But the College Park facility, the county actually helped fortify that, I guess, so that it could be a backup for Fulton County Animal Services, and we use it for that when it's necessary. Okay, I think that's it on the shelter overview, and then Audrey is going to talk some about foster.
Can we show the foster slide? Well, Audrey, unless you guys have a different slide for the foster stuff.
Oh, yeah, we have a different slides. It's pretty basic, but it was going to help guide the conversation.
Okay, thank you.
Are you able to see this? Okay. All right. So Isa asked for us to speak a little bit more about our foster program. I think a lot of you are pretty familiar with it, but for those who aren't, we do have a large low barrier foster program, and it has a lot of different programs sort of within it. So when we talk about foster, we wanted to get a little bit, give you guys a little bit more understanding of exactly what we're talking about. Here are just some of the requirements. We are really low barrier. You do have to be 18 years old. You have to live within reasonable distance, and that is to provide medical care. Most of the medical care, if not, we're able to handle in-house, and so that's one of the ways that we're able to maintain such a large program. So that's why it's a requirement. We do ask that when a pet is placed in one of our foster programs, the ultimate goal is to get them to an adopter, or if it's a rescue situation, which we're going to talk a little bit more about that, the foster does need to be open to those placement options, because they would still work with our team on those as we work through the different options as they come in. We do provide transportation for veterinary visits or emergencies, or they would have to provide transportation, provide sort of safe indoor. We do home visits, which are required by the Georgia Department of Agriculture. We have to do those every 6 months. So that is something that we work with our volunteer team on. So we have a great system where we're able to keep that updated on a regular basis to meet that requirement. And then you have to stay in touch with your foster coordinator. We have wonderful foster coordinators. And so fortunately, that is not something that we usually struggle with too much. The next slide. So just to give you an idea of our staffing, sometimes you'll hear us talk foster or pathways coordinators. So our team, when we talk about pathways team, we're talking about foster. We have one manager, which is the pathways manager, one development coordinator, that's Daisy. You guys know Daisy. 3 coordinators. We do have one position that is open right now. We have Lauren and Stephanie currently in those roles, and we just hired a cat-specific coordinator. He is training at our community animal center right now to get a little bit more familiarity with the organization and a little bit more about our programs right now. And he'll be joining us, I believe, next week or 2 weeks. Next one. David, the next slide.
Hey guys, sorry, was there slides that are meant to be shown for those who are joining remotely? Because I didn't see any slides.
Oh,
Hold 1 second.
Yeah, she's saying it's not showing up online, so they're gonna fix it.
There we go, thank you.
okay. I think many of you are familiar with our Friendly Finder program, but this is something that we set up, I believe it was 2019 originally. And yeah, it's been a really successful program. Really, the primary idea was to keep pets out of the shelter where they can get really stressed and try to get them back home, because pets are often lost within a mile of their home. So we do ask that this is a program where the finder can come in and foster the pet during the stray hold period. It does decrease the illness and definitely keeps the shelter from getting overcrowded. We have had some successes with return to home. We do ask that they work with the shelter before they give the pet back, but we have a program where they go through and we sort of guide them along the process, ask that they put up flyers in the neighborhood so that hopefully the pet owner can find their pet. And most often it moves through the system as an adoption. So once the stray hold has been satisfied, oftentimes we find that the Friendly Finders have found a new family member and they decide to keep. So that's the most common outcome from that program. But it's been pretty successful in reducing the strain that we have on pets at the shelter.
So if there's a friendly finder who has a dog and the dog comes off of stray hold, do you have a lot of people that say, well, I want to find this dog a home? I mean, do you oversee that?
Yeah, so once they go
make sure it
through the
stays in
stray
the
hold,
system.
once they go through the Friendly Finder, it's just during the stray hold. So at the end of the stray hold, they automatically get emails. So we do coach them through and let them know what their options are.
But they can still keep the
they
dog. They
could
just
keep-
have to coordinate with y'all for the dog
Yes.
finding a home.
Yeah, essentially they would then end up going into one of our different programs. So they could bring the pet to the shelter after the stray hold if that was what they decided to do. They could transfer to our regular foster program, which we would have a regular agreement, talk a little bit more about what it would look like to advocate for the dog to get a home, to find an adopter, or they could adopt if the pet was not reunited with the owner.
I think this is one of the best programs because people don't want to, I don't want to take my dog to the pound. I don't want to take the dog to the shelter. And this is just such a great program. It really is.
We do have a few outliers that would make a pet ineligible if there was medical program, issues that we would not be able to support, and we wanted to keep the pet in shelter while we worked through that. Behavior issues, if we needed to make sure that that they were safe for placement. We would want to have a little bit of a better idea before sending them into a home. Also, if a pet has a microchip, we would not, so we do weigh the risk of it would be easier to get the pet back home if they were at the shelter and we could reunite them and work through that way. So if they have a known owner, they would not be able to go into this program.
And do you provide them with food or any medicine that the pet might need if it's not a medical condition that?
We do.
Yeah. It's such a great program.
Thank you. Next one. So we have a lot of short-term programs too, and I believe we started Dog for a Day and Weekend Warrior was like 2015. Dog for a Day was a long time ago. A lot of it was really just trying to get. We know that pets that have an advocate, they get placed so much more, and when we go through and we have our volunteers and advocates out in the community with our dogs. Not only does it help with marketing them, it decreases their stress at the shelter. We did a cortisol study with the University of Virginia, and I think that was also 2019, where they were testing cortisol levels to see if a pet, sometimes some of the criticism that we would hear about these kinds of programs is that if a pet left and then came back, that they may be more stressed. And so they tested that actually with our dogs at Fulton. I believe DeKalb participated as well, and discovered that although when a pet came back after a short time out of the shelter, their cortisol levels would often increase, they never exceeded where they were before the visit. So it was pretty clear that all of the benefits of having them get out of the shelter, have that advocate, learn a lot more about them was all a benefit. So we do allow members of the public to participate. They complete our foster program when they go out, and we let them know all of the sort of do's and don'ts. We do encourage people to go out to public areas like a restaurant. They have a harness and safety. They're sort of given those rules. They do not go to dog parks where they be off leash or spend time off leash with other pets that are not a part of our program. We also have the Weekend Warrior program. This is a longer stay. It's not always over the weekend. It can be midweek, but this would be sort of a sleepover. It could be a couple nights. Same sort of premise. Sometimes people will do this a little bit more. We found some people who are interested in adopting will participate in this, and so it's a good idea for them to figure out how that feels when they get the pet home. And we also have short-term for our transports that we were talking about. Sometimes we will have a transport that's scheduled for 2 to 3 weeks out. And once that pet, oftentimes they're selected so that the rescue partner will know what they're taking on. They'll go ahead and start marketing on their end to find fosters. And so we will utilize our foster program for that time. They are not marketed for obvious reasons during that time because they have a commitment. And it keeps them out of the shelter and staying well for their transport, usually up north.
You can also do this vacation.
Yes, yeah. Yeah, that is, I don't think that's actually in there, but I'm glad you mentioned that. Well, we have some medical, so that's the next slide, but we have done spaycations if we, it's a little bit easier in our newer shelter since we don't have multiple dogs and runs. But we have used fosters for just a few nights so that pets can recover from surgery after their spay or neuter, and that's been pretty successful as well. So general foster, obviously we use foster all the time just for that movement through the system. So our biggest need is for the medium to large blocky-headed pups. We have a lot, if you look at our adoption boards every day, there you will often see adoption from foster. We have a lot of success. Our fosters are wonderful at placing their dogs, and that's one of the great ways we've been able to increase our adoption numbers since we've been seeing some lower numbers over the last couple of years. We have medical, which Belinda, if you want to talk a little bit more about our medical foster.
Yeah, so the heartworm treatment the heartworm treatment foster, a lot of times people that foster and the dog is heartworm positive, they'll go ahead and keep it during that treatment period, which is usually about 30 days. And a lot of times they advocate for these dogs and they actually find homes for them during that time. The illness and surgery recovery is what Audrey had already touched on. We have a lot of bone surgery type things, AFHOs, amputations and things like that. They don't recover well in the shelter, so a lot of times fosters will take them home as well. Underage, obviously, animals that don't have moms don't do well in the shelter. A lot of times they need to be fed several times during the night and during the day, so they do much better in foster. Moms and babies, again, obviously, you don't want babies at shelters if you can avoid that at any time. A lot of times they can go straight into a foster where they can stay until a rescue will pick them up, or they're old enough to come back for adoption, or they find homes for them through our programs. And then kitten fostering this time of year is super, super important. Our numbers jumped dramatically in just the last 2 weeks. Cats are seasonal breeders, so typically they breed in the warmer seasons. So we start seeing a lot of abandoned babies and a lot of litters.
Yeah, we have incredible fosters that will reach out once you're sort of a known bottle foster. They will show up at the shelter if an officer brings them in at like 10 o'clock at night. They get their milk ready to go. So usually around this time we have our kitten, what's it called? Party. What do you?
Oh,
What do you
kitten
call
shower.
it?
Kitten shower.
Kitten shower. Yes, thank you. To get things ready, we have volunteers a lot of times that will help make different packets so that we're ready to go, because it is a pretty immediate situation. And like I was mentioning with our rescue partners and sort of the quick process that we've established to move some of the medical cases to them when they're needed, our fosters step up. It's a pretty well-organized system with these fosters. They step in quickly. We also have used behavioral fosters. Sometimes we have dogs in the shelter that are starting to experience some shelter stress. That's very, very common, and really it happens to pretty much all dogs. At some point, they're going to have some strain from being confined for long periods of time. And although the new shelter is a much nicer place for them, it's also isolated. So we have what we sort of would call behavioral issues, or what we assume are behavioral issues. Like the only way we see these dogs are at the shelter. So sometimes it's very hard to decipher whether or not a dog would be successful in a home. So we do occasionally have behavioral fosters where we would communicate with the foster about what the need is, what we've seen, agree on communication plan for how long they would take them out. Usually it's a short period of time, and then we'll reevaluate and figure out if, in fact, the dog is very successful in this home and they want to convert to a longer-term foster, or if they say, hey, that's all I can do, I'm going to bring the dog back, and now we've learned that this dog can do well in a home. That makes it a lot easier for us to find them, and not only do they also help advocate for the dog from then on. So we've been able to save a lot of lives and move some dogs that were really struggling out by our behavior fosters. For the most part, we have a smaller group of fosters that are usually already a part of this program, but sometimes it'll be a volunteer that has spent some time with the dog in the shelter and believes in it and wants to give it a try, and we'll work it that way too. We also have live evidence fostering. So I think many of you are familiar with that. We do have additional, would be when a pet is a part of a court case. And so they are waiting for the court to determine what their outcome can be. And so we don't have control over what the outcome. Sometimes the case can take a while. We do weigh whether or not we think it would be appropriate for the pet to go into foster care. Oftentimes it is, but it does have to be a match because we have certain restrictions. Obviously, they're not going to be advertised for adoption. They can't leave to go to dog parks or anything like that, which we don't allow in our foster program anyway. But there's some additional concerns when you're holding a pet for live evidence, which I hate to use that sort of term about animals, but we do hope that they can get out of the shelter. It just can be a challenge at times when you don't have full control over the situation for the foster.
I have two questions. Do you remember, and I know it varies by dog, but the average amount of time, was it like, I can't remember if it was 10 days or 3 weeks for kennel stress to start?
Oh, for kennel stress. Usually about 2 weeks is where you can see a difference. I think there was a study that was done recently, and I can't quote it because I can't speak to, but it's around 2 weeks that we can start seeing a difference.
Yeah. And then for the live evidence, do we have any numbers on the average amount of time animals end up getting held for court cases?
I don't know the average. It really depends on the case, too. So it would be, and we do try to weigh out, if we believe that the pet is going to be able to go back home, that might not be something that we decide to utilize our foster program for. So we've had some cases that have taken, quite a long time. So I don't have an average for that.
I know DeKalb had a problem with cases being drug out much longer than they should have, and I know we're a new board, so we haven't really paid attention to that yet.
We don't really have the problem in Fulton that we have in DeKalb
No,
at all.
Amazing.
Nobody does, actually.
No, right.
DeKalb is unique.
Right now, we have three pets in live evidence foster right now.
Okay, so that's good.
Yeah,
That's
DeKalb
good.
probably still has about 65 in the shelter. But it's very different. And part of that is the way, and we did address it at this meeting at one point, part of the way is the way the service is configured. So in Fulton County, our officers are the ones that are presenting the cases in court. We have a little bit more flexibility in we are in direct contact with the owners. So our officers are in a position to seek a surrender, whereas if that's what's called for and then the animal doesn't have to be held. We're also able to, if we have to, Fulton County has given us permission to file different motions in court and even a separate claim if we need to for cost of care. And while we haven't had to do that very often, we at least have that ability. We don't have that ability in DeKalb. And the county attorney is starting to do that now, but up until really a couple of months ago, none of those judicial proceedings were happening in DeKalb. So there was no mechanism to get the animals released. And also we started, Fulton County did court remotely. I mean, they didn't miss a whole lot. The DeKalb court shut down. So there's a huge there's a backlog in Fulton County as well, but there's there's still a massive court backlog in Fulton County, but all right, that's awesome. Single digits, like single years, does that mean? Oh, okay, all right. They're making progress, but yeah, we're the pandemic's not quite over for the courts yet, or for the animals. So.
And this is our last slide. Right now, we have 337 animals in our foster care system. Of that, the friendly finders are 23, and you can see the cats 78 and 259 dogs. I think we did have one ferret and one turtle, but those were in the friendly finder, I believe. Yeah, so those would be part of
Friendly finder ferret?
Yeah.
That's adorable.
It's
right?
Yeah, we had a gerbil once that showed up. It was a true stray gerbil. Yes, we do. As you can see, there's a lot of effort in putting animals into the foster program, but something that we think is really important in the foster system and our team works really hard at is making it movement through that program itself, because like everything, this is an extension of our capacity and our shelter walls, and so we want for our teams take a lot of pride in communicating with the fosters. They do a really good job in developing those relationships and making sure that we're trying to communicate as clearly as possible with what the options are. So there's clear defined programs, and we can sort of plug different people into which program makes most sense for them. Daisy, our development coordinator, Pathways development coordinator, but she's been a part of the foster team for 2 or 3 years now, 3 years. So fortunately, we've had some stability in that program that has really helped that movement through the system. So we don't have a whole lot of backlog, where often they get adopted pretty quickly. Any questions?
I have a question. Do you guys track length of stay in the foster program? Like length of stay for them being in the foster?
We do, but I actually don't know it right now. Do you know?
Yeah, we track all that, but I don't know the numbers off my head.
I can pull that, Isa, and get that to you, because we have them in our stats. I just couldn't rattle it off right now.
Great, thank you.
Okay, I was asked to report out on a couple of different issues. First, the cyber attack and how it impacted animal services, and we're all aware of the cyber attack and the fact that the phone systems was down, as Rebecca was talking about earlier. It also impacted CAD and the way the officers were dispatched. So it was really a hard event to go through and to manage on both sides, the emergency management side and Lifeline side. So a couple of things that emergency management did, we were able to pass out some cell phones, and we also put that booster in, the cell phone booster, into the shelter. Overall, it wasn't hugely successful, but it did help a little bit. I think the biggest impacts, and Rebecca, correct me or Audrey, correct me if I'm wrong, was to the phone systems and the lack of being able to dispatch the officers to calls. Those were the two biggest impacts. And emergency management, we did what we could to relieve some of the stressors involved in that. But I think overall the cooperation between emergency management and Lifeline went very well, and we were able to get the officers out where they were needed to go. And also working with IT, the phones was eventually brought back into service. It just took some back and forth to get it working. The other issue was the suspension of services to the city of Atlanta. I think that was early April to around the 17th. And I think you guys received about 98 dogs, 100 dogs or so, from residents who brought the dogs to the shelter. I don't know of any other issues as far as like dangerous dogs or vicious dogs incidents that took place during this time that had any real danger to the residents. But I do know 98 dogs came in by residents. Anything else you'd like to add, Lifeline?
Were there any dogs picked up and surrendered by police officers? Like, obviously people were supposed to call 911 or 311. Did y'all see anything happening in that area? Or was it all just residents?
We did have some officers bring them in over the counter, which would mean they came to the shelter and worked with our team to bring them in. And I don't know if you wanted to add to that.
We tried to assist City of Atlanta for emergencies as a lifeline, just so that, no animal would be in jeopardy. And we had about 12 or 13 animals come in through that to Lifeline's facility, not to the Fulton shelter. But it was really sort of a very low safety net. I mean, it was just, if it was some sort of a, kind of life or death kind of situation, or if it was there was an animal involved that was impeding another law enforcement activity. So one of the things our officers do is respond to assist, and so their officers didn't have any assistance and had to deal with the animals themselves on scenes. But it was there were very few incidents like that, but we did put something in place for them. But that again was the county actually had directed the City of Atlanta to call us and see what we could do, but we don't have the ability to create a whole new service for City of Atlanta. They already have that service. So
Yeah, one of the things I just want to make sure we're clear, as the county, we realize that if we just said we lock down the facility and we don't allow dogs to come in, dogs would end up in the facility one way or the other, tied to gates, running out into the streets, whatever it would. We knew that would happen, so we took the approach of if they get there, we're going to take them. So the county did facilitate that and didn't say, we publicly said, hey, you got to sign this agreement and move forward. But we also took the stance of, hey, we don't want dogs injured. We have a humanistic approach to this and go, these dogs are going to end up at the facility. and we don't want them to just be tied up at the corner of the facility. So just, that's something, I mean, wasn't reported on, but that's something that continued to happen. That's how the 100 dogs got there, was we got there and it wasn't, let's shut the doors and shut the gates down. So we thought that was important to make sure that we maintain.
Yeah, we did work in conjunction with the county on scripts for our team because it was challenging for the team. But all of those roughly 100, I think it was almost close to exactly 100 pets that were brought in, they were brought in without having to be tied to any poles or anything like that. We didn't experience any of that because we did let them know if you found a pet what was going on, but we accepted the pet without.
It was my understanding that somebody could bring the pet in, but that City of Atlanta dispatch calls were not going to be fulfilled. And I don't know what the status is of the contract and.
It's all back to normal now.
Good.
So,
Yeah.
so the city of Atlanta has signed, and just getting back, I just want to go over also on the cyber incident. We continue to dispatch calls. So the calls are handled here through our the county's communications center. So those calls continue to be dispatched. There was never a, yeah, no, I'm saying going back to the cyber incident, when so the calls were still processed and dispatched. We didn't not dispatch calls. It was just in the way they were processed that was changed. And then the City of Atlanta calls. City of Atlanta, we know from talking to the City of Atlanta and residents that called 311 were basically given a 10-digit number to Lifeline, which later became we'll just press the button and get Fulton County Dispatch. Fulton County Dispatch wouldn't say, had a script to read. The Lifeline folks had a script to read that, we were doing it a different way. But we still got a significant number of calls to our communication center from City of Atlanta residents during that time period.
Neither the county nor Lifeline was willing to just have the animals abandoned, right? So, but there was no field service available to the City of Atlanta.
That concludes my report.
I guess we are up to the Animal Welfare Board Committee updates. I am paired
Sorry,
with,
Phyllis, I had a
Go ahead.
question for EMA folks. Update or progress on that.
So that is something that has to be handled from the board to the county attorney's level. That's really not on the emergency management side.
can you explain a little bit more about what that means and what the process is to get that to happen?
So the county attorney would have to speak on the process, but the board makes up that policy, if we want to refer to it as that. Those guidelines are designed by the board and voted on by the board and implemented by the board. So I'm not sure how I don't know what the process is to change those guidelines.
You can change your bylaws.
Yeah, they're your bylaws.
I'm talking a little bit out of turn. Is the county attorney here? Yes. Oh, okay.
So I think I know where this is.
So,
I don't think it was made.
by ordinance, it sits with the board. Right, that is an ordinance.
So that would be the board's decision, not Lifeline's or ours. So
Right.
that's the board has, that's,
No, I'm sorry, by county ordinance, the dangerous dog function lies within this board. And I don't think the board can change that.
Right, that's, to our understanding, that was for the Fulton County Commissioners would have to change that because it's part of the county ordinance for us to handle it.
But the board, so the attorney, so just so we're all straight on the way, the attorney works, in this case, the attorney works for the board, or the board uses the county's attorney as that vehicle. We are the facilitators of the meeting. That's all we are over here on this side. So you could give direction, you can give recommendations, you work directly with the county attorney's office. You could actually bring up stuff to the board. You all represent the county commission. You were all appointed by a county commissioner. So all of that is done through you all at that side.
Hi, guys. So I'm Sandy Monroe. I'm here on behalf of the County Attorney's Office. I am Assistant County Counsel. And this is about, I believe this is a situation that is, I'm not sure if the conversation has commenced, but I do recall that they're moving away from dealing with animal, classification of dangerous dogs into Superior Court. Is that the concern, moving it away from Superior Court into, for the board to
It's
decide?
moving it away from the board.
Okay,
which
moving
is
it
the
away from the board.
current county ordinance
Okay.
into Superior Court responsibility.
Right, so Joe is correct on that. That's something that we would have to work closely with the Board of Commissioners to effectuate by way of ordinance, to make any changes to that.
So does that mean we need to submit a request to the county commissioners?
So you would make that request to myself or Brad, who's my supervisor. We would begin that conversation, what that would look like, and then we will speak with Sue, the county attorney, to see how that would be processed.
Got it. So do we need to submit a letter to you, or can we make this an official request?
You need to draft a change recommending the change. The county attorney reviews the change, and then it goes in front of the board for the change. The board ultimately will say yes or no to the change you're requesting, but that you have to draft it and say, this is the article, I don't know what it is, but Article 5 says this is the way it was written. We know it was changed already legally because you're not hearing those cases anymore. And that, you just have to reflect that, either remove it or indicate how that process is working now. The county attorney will review it and then go in front of the board. So I have to go as an agenda item. The agenda item gets voted on. They solidify the agenda item, and then that change goes into effect onto your bylaws.
All right, and we can have this conversation off record as to what that process is. I can verify what Joe is saying. I'm not per se privy to what the exact steps are, but that sounds just about right how Joe described it, but just want to make sure that I confirm that with the county attorney, and we can talk about those steps, and then from that point on, we can go about communicating. Well, the board can communicate what your idea is in changing the ordinance, and then we can escalate that up.
I had been under the impression that it had already happened. We're talking about dangerous dogs? Is that the dangerous
Yes.
dog cases?
Yes.
I had recalled it being in the language, I believe of the bylaws, the actual dangerous dog language, and that it wasn't in the current bylaws, so I had thought there was some sort of change had already taken place.
It's something that I'm not aware of, so we would have to take
Okay.
a deeper look into, and we can follow up on that issue.
Can you guys hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Yeah, I think that was Laura Land who was just speaking. Yeah, my understanding before this actual board, I guess, started to be in place as the Animal Welfare Board, it was my understanding that this had already been proposed, and that's why I was asking what the progress was with the assumption that this had already been proposed. But it sounds like it hasn't, so I think the board members need to kind of take a step back to see if this is something we'd like to move forward with.
I think, or even just check, because I believe when we voted or did, and I wasn't actually on the board yet, but I was in the audience. In the very beginning, there were new bylaws that I was pretty sure that language had been removed. So if we could just like double back, if you could maybe check and see whether that's already been done or not.
Okay.
And let us know, that'd be
Yeah.
great.
Hey, Isa, do you want to do an update for the shelter committee?
Can you just pull up
I might have lost
So
it.
where are we at on the agenda? Sorry.
The Animal Welfare Board Committee updates. I didn't know if you wanted to comment on the shelter.
For the shelter operations update, I guess there were a few questions that we had. Following up from the last meeting, we know there was a member of the public who had attended, kind of expressing high-level concerns about how can we better communicate to the public about things like our animal welfare board meetings, minutes, agendas, things of that nature. Is there a way for us to place these items in one particular area on the Fulton County website?
I think that's for Joe and Bern. Is there a way for us to post updates on the county website specifically for animal welfare?
What type of updates? You're talking about like the agenda notes from past meetings and those kind of things?
Yes. Agenda, meeting minutes, like all in one place, one centralized place.
I don't see why because they're public, so those are all public facing. We could probably just put it on the Animal Services, the Fulton County Animal Services website.
Or maybe make a page, like a tab for the Animal Welfare Board from the Fulton County? Oh, there is, okay.
Say it again?
Making a link to a page that's for the Animal Welfare Board, but she said it's already on there.
I'm sorry, I can't hear you.
No, I was just saying if you go online, and let me just say this, I didn't click on it, I just clicked on the live, when we go live on. But there is a tab for animal welfare. She's going to speak to it, I guess.
Hey guys, my name is Laura Moore. If we've not met yet, I'm a public affairs officer with External Affairs, and we can definitely update the website however you like. If you can just get with me after this, and I can share a card, and our digital team can share those updates.
So I'm on the Animal Services website now, and I don't see a page for welfare or the board unless it's
What
So are you looking at the,
Fulton County Animal Services.com.
no, that's the site that Lifeline maintains for the county.
Oh,
And we can add something on that site as
so
well.
what site is there?
And then the county has a tab for animal services on the county's website, so it's fultoncountyga.gov.
Got it. And then you guys are saying that we could upload our minutes and such.
Yeah, we
On
could,
that website.
Audrey will reach out to our digital team and they can create something for the Animal Welfare Board that would have the meeting dates and minutes.
And we can offline as a board about whether it makes more sense to put it on the Fulton County page or if it makes more sense to put it on the
It might
Animal
be on the Fulton
Services
County page, like they have a page for different committee meetings where this agenda should be there, because that's by law, it's supposed to be posted. And I don't know if the minutes are already there or not.
I'm not seeing.
I don't
So
think the
just
minutes.
Taking a step back, it's not. I've checked.
Okay.
The Fulton County site.
Oh, I'm
I've
sorry.
checked on the Lifeline site.
Okay.
That's why I'm bringing this up. But this conversation is case in point, right, to the member of the public's question from the last meeting. So let's definitely take an action, from the Shelter Operations Committee. So I guess basically myself and Calissa. Let's work with Laura as well as Lifeline to understand kind of what's the best placement for this and what should be posted to make sure that it is actually clear on where members of the public can easily access this type of information.
Sounds good.
Aside from
Actually, everybody's meeting tomorrow again to look at the mock-ups that have been done, and they're going to determine when we're going to actually start the project.
And Isaac,
there was a call out. Go ahead.
sorry, this is going to be massive project, so I'm glad that you brought it up. They did, initially, we thought we were going to get started pretty soon. Sort of a good, bad thing, that they decided to do a mock-up that slowed down the process pretty significantly. So we're going to take a look and see if that's going to be an acceptable way to move them out. But if they do decide to move forward, we are going to have to move all dogs out of the shelter and go through and repaint every animal area. It really does impact the whole shelter. So this will take some time. We've been working with the county, and been working with the construction crew, CGL, who does, the county has on-site maintenance every day. So it's sort of been a lot of different teams trying to make the best decision possible as we move forward. But it is sort of slowed down pretty significantly. We should know more tomorrow.
Can I ask what the,
No, and sorry to mention too, Rebecca just had a good comment. It's not all dogs all at once. We are breaking this down into different sections. Belinda put together a plan so that we can move animals through. Hopefully, we would have quite a bit of fosters that would help assist with this as well. But we're going to go section by section.
what is the background of this? I'd heard a little bit about it, but what went wrong with brand new, like, what's the story?
It is my understanding that when they put the paint on, the paint did not stick to the primer, which allowed moisture to get up underneath that and cause it to peel.
Part that you had. The last piece from a shelter operations.
Hey, this is David. We've ordered shades for the outside runs already. The contractors have been out to measure, so we will have shades installed hopefully very soon.
Do we have a timeline for the shades at all?
No, not yet. The contractor was out last week and did all the measurements. There's some issues with where the concrete is and where the ground starts, so they have a little more. They may have to remove some fencing and some other things, but we're waiting on a quote, but it's in the process.
And did they, and I'm sorry, I'm asking this just because I didn't even think to look, did they fix the play yards where the dogs were escaping? Did that happen?
Yes and no. Well, yes and no. We've put a temporary, I guess, a temporary fix right now. For some reason, a lot of the dirt was removed from the play yards prior to moving in, so we're bringing in a concrete contractor, and we're waiting on more quotes. We received one, but we're waiting on more to fortify what they call the rat wall, which is behind the kennels, so the dogs can escape. Also, in between the kennels where the dogs are digging under, there's concrete blocks for the poles that have to be redesigned and redid, so it's a little work. But yes, we're working on it.
I don't know if that has been on folks' radar and getting that addressed. I believe it's screens that are up front in the welcome lobby area.
I'm not aware of any issues. We use them every day. Do you mean the TVs that are up front?
I believe so. I believe there is an issue in terms of it doesn't seem like it's connected to the internet directly. I can kind of give details offline about this, but
Okay.
I know it was brought up by a few volunteers.
Okay. Yeah, I'm happy to address that if you want to get offline. That-
And that should be the update for my shelter operations committee guys. Unless, Calista, did you have anything else?
No, I did not think to check about some of the items the last time I was there, but I think you answered it. We can move on to the education, which we don't have a whole lot to report, but we did have our first meeting with Lifeline and with emergency management about moving forward in getting humane education in public schools, which is in the very beginnings, although you guys have already started doing stuff. But I'm excited. So we're talking about Lifeline's going to look at some appropriate materials, and then from there we can figure out how to get into more schools and what the plan is, as well as doing stuff at the shelter, programs at the shelter for public schools.
I don't have much. Honestly, I just have a question. How would you all like the education? Is it just for schools? Are we just trying to, do we have a broad range of education that we want to kind of stretch out and how you want to do it? Or?
I think that's sort of a larger, but there's quite a few things that Lifeline already does.
Okay.
So we kind of need to look at the scale and bandwidth and kind of how far we want to go into this. We do have, Brantley was on the call that we were on. She does a lot of community events. We do host some different things at the shelter. We're already going into some schools, but we don't have like a humane education curriculum, and this is not something that we're going out and we have, a certain list of schools that are participating. So I think we need to sort of determine where we want to go with that. But right now we are doing a number of different things already with the community with regards just to education.
Okay. And I would probably say I would like to probably look into just seeing what we already have and see how we can kind of improve that. From my standpoint, even educate some of the, not just the owners, but just everybody overall to create the conversation. Because I think sometimes when we do have issues, we look at it from one side versus both sides. So that would be a great conversation to have.
And then, I don't see Kate today. Marlon, do you want to talk about your committee?
I hadn't been at the last meeting, so I haven't been and done anything up to date, but Yashina, I think, are we speaking about the legislation committee?
Yeah.
If you add something, and then I can piggyback on anything you have to say.
I think we're going to talk a little bit more about it, just to kind of briefly go over it. Maybe we'll just put like an action plan. I think that's just how I work, is what's the action behind it? Review, rewrite, and reassure. So kind of reviewing the legislation that we already have, what needs to be rewritten, or write new legislation, and then reassure that we will enforce whatever legislation there is. I think my biggest thing would be how do we get the public or the citizens to be engaged? Maybe we can find some type of platform that they can comment, suggest, or, and maybe this is a segue, I don't know if I'm getting off topic here. I did ask to see, and since we do have representation from the attorney's office, a virtual option for our meetings, is that a possibility that we could do in the future? Because I know other boards meet virtually.
So this was an issue from the very beginning. So this was a concern that was brought to our office attention at the very onset of this year, and I think last year. And the issue that as it pertains to the bylaws, it's very clear that you must have a quorum physically present in order to conduct your meetings, and that would exclude virtual meetings. So unless there's an amendment to your bylaws, there's nothing we can do right now as it pertains to virtual meetings. You can participate, but the quorum must be present in person physically in order for a meeting to be pursued.
And so I was going to say the changing of the bylaws is what we discussed earlier.
Correct.
referencing
And
the
what that
same
process would be like,
Okay.
yes.
Okay, so
So
we
it'd be
can,
the
we can
same
pursue
process.
that.
Okay.
then.
Karen, do you have anything to add to committee notes? That's okay. We'll offline. It's okay. All right. Does anybody have any questions?
I would say a little bit more with the legislation. I would say before the next meeting, we can reach out to different legislative advocates in the state and see what's going on. So it's not a last minute thing, and we can kind of advise commissioners more and see, even from Lifeline, guys, what would help with the legislatively, with the influx, with the post-pandemic world that shelters across the country are facing. Where is it going better anywhere else? Is it the South? Is there anything legally that would help if there was something in the books? I'm spitballing, mandatory spay neuter, the dream of all dreams. But is there anything that would be good for Fulton County to go after moving forward to ease things up?
I mean, that's sort of a loaded thing because when you're talking about legislation, you also kind of have to look at the infrastructure in the communities to support any sort of legislation that's moved forward. I mean, we've mentioned this in this meetings before, but we do have a real issue with the veterinary crisis. So I would encourage anyone who's looking at legislation, which I think is worthy to look at, but to consider people's access to care, because there's some real issues with that right now, and a lot of places. You had actually looked at, Rebecca, something not that long ago. I think the average cost, I think it was you that mentioned, to get a pet spayed in Georgia was like $500 or something. So there's some real struggles.
We have to share. I don't know why, but so I had to do it in DeKalb County. It's $525 was the average of like a handful of vets in DeKalb County. And I think I even included some Fulton County vets for a spay neuter. So when you're looking at the what kind of a barrier that is for pet owners, that has to give you a little bit of pause when you start talking about mandatory spay neuter. I think there are a lot of different things that could be explored. The dangerous animal classification structure is a little weird, and in fact, I was just looking up the ordinance now, because I think it does. It doesn't happen in Superior Court. I think it has it actually. The appellate process has to go through this body first, and then can go to the probate court if this body's not functioning. So that's kind of an odd thing. So the ordinances need some attention, but it's much more technical stuff than it is, really sort of a, gosh, this is going to solve our problem kind of thing. I have advocated for, and will continue to do so, some sort of bond process, so there is no, that effectively would rid us of the court hold for animals for people who fail to appear, and things like that. And we don't have anything like that. But and basically that kind of provision would be if animals ended up in the shelter because of some sort of enforcement action, that the owner would have to essentially pay a bond or surrender the animals, and or they would lose custody if they didn't pay. And it doesn't have to be huge. It just has to be enough for them to show that they do have an interest in getting their animals back. And I think that would help, but it's not as bad of a problem in Fulton County as it is elsewhere. I can't think of any other. There's an ordinance that was passed that had to do with a ban on like roadside sales of puppies and kittens. It's already passed, but it's only for unincorporated Fulton County. So they're waiting for the rest of the cities to adopt that kind of an ordinance. I did have reason to look at City of Atlanta's ordinances recently, and they have not been updated in probably 25 years. And there's lots of crazy stuff in them. So Not that you would want to turn your attention to that, but they are in need of some assistance there.
And so does Lifeline have any method, or do you all have any communication with citizens who give you suggestions or ask questions or their concerns? Or
Oh yeah,
we're just basically
through social media, and then also, I mean, most people reach us through social media. People can email us directly. There are info email addresses for all of our different locations, and we've got there's at the end of every one of our email signatures is, take our visitor survey, or, right? So we are always trying to solicit more information from the public. And we hope to actually ramp that up even more, to have better contact with people who are coming into the shelter.
Okay.
For whatever reason, whether it's adoption or they need a different service. But yeah.
All right, thank you.
Is there going to be an option, possibility to do transport for low-income spay neuter outside of the Pets for Life zip codes if somebody needs it, if they can prove they're low income and they don't have a way to bring an animal in?
So that is not a part of the service that we provide to Fulton County. But if the county can decide they want that to happen, and we can make it happen. But that's not something that's a part of what we do for Fulton County.
Unless they're in the Pets for Life zip code.
Pets for Life is a Lifeline program, so
Right,
we
right.
don't have. We do have programs for other residents, but we focus most of our efforts on Pets for Life. But the we in that sentence is Lifeline, not Fulton County Animal
Right.
Services.
I know, like, if an animal gets picked up, part of return home, there's an option to do spay and neuter before they take them back.
Yes, that's absolutely.
But for people who
yeah.
can't get to the shelter, that are low income, I was just wondering if there was a way to help.
I mean, if they
transport.
call for help, we'll try to find a way to help them through Fulton County Animal Services. Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
I was just taking some notes going back to the ordinances for the city. We have, it's been probably a year, because Matt was the one that was reaching out to them, so we will reach out to all the cities. One of the things that puts us at a kind of a weird way is we do have some county-wide authorities based on county ordinances, but we have wanted to get the cities. So what I'll do is I'll have Vern and David reach out to all the cities with some of the changes, like this puppy mill law that came into effect. I want to say now it's been over 2 years now, and some of the other ones, to make sure that we're lining up with, so all the cities are lined up. Atlanta sometimes adopts some of the county ordinances and just kind of copies it and puts it over on theirs, and kind of flows with that. So we'll definitely circle back with that, because it kind of has something to do also with the way our county police is able to enforce certain things in other parts of the county. And so I'll circle back and make sure that we're going back to that and checking with all the cities and making sure that we are able to do that. Because that IGA, just to give you a way that we operate, is the interlocal agreement basically with these cities is what allows us to go in there and enforce certain laws. So one of the things that happened when Atlanta basically wouldn't sign the agreement, we don't have the authority to go in there and do that, because the function of animal services is not a mandated function. So we do that through that agreement is what allows us and gives us basically the authority to go into that jurisdiction and apply those laws.
Right. There was a way that they explained it at the commissioner meeting, that it wasn't that they were trying to be mean, but because of the way their laws are set, they have to have a signed IGA.
Yeah, without that
in order to have
IGA, we
permission.
don't have the authority to go in there and enforce certain things. And that happens with even on the law enforcement side under jurisdictional boundaries. So we started that project. I just remember it had to do with the whole puppy mill ordinance that came from the state. So I know it's been more than 2 years. So I'll have Vern and David start circling back with all the cities, because that's one of many that we wanted to make sure are being pushed out by these cities.
Okay, yeah, I think that would be interesting for the whole board to see.
And I think what needs to happen before some of these bylaws, just going back to the bylaws, before we go to the county commission with any recommended changes, we probably need to have your group review them and sit with Vern and and Lifeline and go, let's come up, because what you don't want to do is go to that board more than once. You want to go there with, hey, these are the changes that we have for our bylaws, and do it one time, because it's hard to go through this process many times over just to.
Right, and just doing some brief research on the matter. So it's just not, so as it pertains to the dog classification and the changes that are happening with that, or potential changes, there's no current updates. However, if there were to be a change, in addition to the changes in the bylaws, there would need to be changes in the county ordinance, and even escalated up to the state perhaps, because our current laws are found in both. So it would have to be changed uniformly. And then moving over to the virtual meeting issue, again, that's not an issue solely isolated to the bylaws. It would also affect, it would also affect county ordinance, and not county ordinance, but the Open Meetings Act. So that's something it would have to align with the actual act, the Open Meetings Act, which is our biggest obstacle.
Right, and to my understanding, that was something that was already being pursued, but I don't know how long it will take for that to change.
Right. As far as the Open Meetings Act being modified?
Yeah, just redefining it now that there's capabilities of internet and Zoom.
Yeah.
Because the way that it's written now, a call-in doesn't count. But that was before there was Zoom and internet meetings.
I think it would definitely make everybody's life more easier, but that's something that we would actually have to take effect in order for us to make any changes to your bylaws that would be legal, right? Because it can't be in conflict with laws that are superior to your bylaws.
I can just tell you, because I see the other boards, I see them all meeting in person, so I don't know.
I think DeKalb is meeting on
I
Zoom
mean,
still.
Fulton boards. Yeah.
He just said all of the other boards, and I was like, well, that's not true. It's different. Yes.
If there have not been any changes with regards to the vicious and dangerous dog element, and the board's remit to that, I'm going to assume there has not been any type of vicious and dangerous dog cases that the board needed to be made aware of, since it has never been brought up, at least since this particular board has been put in place. Is that correct?
Right. Well, the board would only come into a play if someone appeals the classification.
Okay. So we have not.
So there have been no appeals of any classifications, no.
Okay. I wanted to make sure we weren't missing anything while we're still trying to figure out what we want to do with this. So, okay.
No, it's not a really frequent occurrence, and there haven't been any appeals.
I had something off topic that came up because I do a lot of volunteer work, not as much with the shelter anymore, but a lot with rescues, and have had animals that have gone missing in rescue. Shy animal goes with a foster, slips out the door, and it's missing. And one of our concerns was, what if it ends up dead on the side of the road? Somebody hit it, worst case scenario. But to our understanding, there's no situation where Waste Management has a chip scanner that they're scanning any of the bodies that they pick up to make sure they're not microchipped, to let the owner know if the dog has been found dead or cat. And I wondered if that's something that would be a big ask to do, so that whenever it does happen, the owner is aware.
So unlike some of the other jurisdictions around us, the county doesn't provide waste services at all. So that's not something we could do. If you look at DeKalb and others, they are the waste service provider for those counties. But we don't do that here for the citizens.
And I actually think City of Atlanta may do that. There are a lot of people working on what was going to happen with the Department of Sanitation in City of Atlanta. I don't know where it ended up, but it is something the cities handle.
Okay, so it would have to go through each city.
Yeah.
Okay. That's at least good to know where to start. The dog was found in our situation, but I don't know I know there's still at least one other rescue that I'm friends with that they're missing still.
So I just wanted to kind of take a step back to wrap up the committee updates piece. I know Katie Pfeffer is, I believe is not, was not able to attend the meeting, but from a community update piece, I wanted to get an update from Lifeline. I know this is not a Fulton County program, but I know it is a program that Lifeline does. I want to get, if Lifeline can share the healthy, like an update on the Healthy Pets event that they've done this past March, I believe it was.
Yeah, we had a great turnout. We did partner with Commissioner Kadisha, and I want to say the numbers for that event was 1,087. Okay. Yes.
Can you describe, Rebecca, you know I love this program, but can you
Yeah.
describe for folks who may not be aware?
So it's an event we do. We set up in a central location wherever we can find parking. In this case, it was called the Jackson First Baptist Church. Is that right? Kind of in the Collier Heights area, not very far from the new shelter. We provide free vaccinations, free microchips, vouchers for free spay-neuter, hot dogs for humans, free pet food, leashes and collars. It is a massive event. It's going to be a massive event. I think at the Fulton event we had, I believe, 10 veterinarians, and each one of those veterinarians has a team. And there were some different folks from the county and from the city were also participated. But yeah, over 1,000 pets, and they get all that free stuff. We estimate that if you add that, well, without the spay neuter, we're giving away about $300 worth of services to each one of those pets. So that's $300,000 given out to the community. But and it's very, very well attended, and that event went really well. And then we topped that number last month in Doraville. We had over 1,263. So I think we were in the 1,100, like maybe it was 1,180 at the Fulton event. It was amazing, and please look out for those and come see one if you have a chance. We'll have them again in the fall. So the space has to be pretty big because we have to both accommodate that size event. So if you think 1,000 animals, that means usually 2,000 or 3,000 people, and they're all in cars, so or most of them are in cars. So there's a big parking thing that happens as well. So we've outgrown most parks and need some pretty large spaces to accommodate the parking.
The spay-neuter vouchers, where do those
So
happen?
those can be redeemed at one of Lifeline's clinics, and we do have one that's the College Park Clinic that redeems most of the vouchers that are given out at Fulton, and we get about a 30% redemption rate, which is not great, but not bad. And about 65 to 70% of the pets that attend these events are not spayed or neutered. So it's really a needed thing, and that is privately supported through donations to Lifeline.
And Lifeline has trying to think of how to say this, has protocol to follow up on the vouchers to try and get them redeemed.
I mean, we do, but in reality, we're getting out hundreds of vouchers, and we hope the best. So we don't have a team that goes and calls everybody back. So, no, yeah.
Does anybody else have any questions? Is there a way that we see public comments? Do you guys have anything on record from public comments? Okay. All right, well, I think we could make a motion to adjourn the meeting. Does anybody want to make a motion?
So moved.
And second the motion? Do you guys hear that? I don't think she turned on the mic.
So moved.
Second.
All right, we will adjourn the meeting. Thank you.
Thank you. Good job.
Awesome. Anybody want, I don't know what these are called, but they were freshly made by our crafty team. What are these? Macaroons?